Alex, it's a real pleasure to have the opportunity to interview you again today. It was clear last time we spoke that you have been quite successful in getting stories into the travel media which address these issues around travel and racism and the diversity issue in general. Why have you been successful when so many others haven't been successful?
Yeah, I think it's a mix of things. Starting off, I wasn't very successful. I would pitch for years to write about diverse stories, cultural features, um, diverse voices in the tourism industry. And I would get a lot of pushback from editors like, this doesn't fit within this Heritage Month, or we have to wait till Pride Month next year, or whatever it may be. And that always frustrated me because we need to tell these diverse stories. My job as a travel writer is to be a storyteller, and people want to read stories. Listicles are great, but they're not the most exciting thing to read, right? Um, I have had the luck of working with certain editors who are very supportive, who are great allies to diverse communities, and who have supported me in my interest and want to write about diverse stories and people in the tourism industry and racism. And so because of those editors and the wonderful support that they've shown me, my work has gotten out. I've had more people interested. And as of late, I've had a lot of people reach out to me about writing diverse stories or stories about racism and colonialism or whatever it may be. So that's very exciting for me to see that the publishing industry, and when it comes to travel, is open to these stories and open to having honest discussions about racism in the tourism industry.
Do you feel that the quality of the writing has to be better than for an advertorial piece, of which there is so much in the travel press?
I do. I think, writing a features piece or writing a story in the travel, in the travel sphere, you have to rely on a lot of skills to bring in a reader. And when you're writing about racism, which is a very tough topic for, number one, for you to write and for people to want to read and to want to be open-minded about reading, because it's one of those topics that people go, oh no, like you're making me feel uncomfortable. You have to develop a way of writing that really makes people feel comfortable with reading that story. And I hate that because you hope that people would be excited to learn about racism in tourism or the travel industry and that they wouldn't have those reactions. But I found that that's been the case. I've had to look and call on other experts in the tourism industry to give their feedback through quotes and interviews. I'm not just relying on my own experiences, which I have had some experiences of racism in the tourism industry, but I'm asking other people to share their experiences to get this wide array of viewpoints in an article so that people could really see, oh, that's that anecdote, I can relate to that anecdote, or I understand that. I've noticed that people don't usually connect with like facts about racism in the tourism industry. They connect with the stories, they connect with experiences. So you really have to be thoughtful and mindful about how you present that in stories. And I'm really so happy to see that more writers are being able to tell those stories and being able to share those experiences and have this honest discussion.
So do you think there's a kind of new generation of travel writers coming through who are willing to go the extra mile, if you like, to cover these kinds of stories, to hone their skills and to make sure that they do get published?
Well, yes and no. I think there has been a wide array of travel writers that have been in the industry for, 3 to 20 years who've been wanting to write this stuff. And just at this moment, we've had a big change in the world. We're discussing racism openly, which the tourism industry hasn't done before. But I think publishing is more open to allowing us to tell those stories. And I'm so glad to see that. So glad to see that editors are reaching out for those diverse storytellers. And I think that's going to allow a new generation to come through and to be able to tell whatever story that they want to tell in the travel industry, and it not be one of those pushback kind of things from the publishing side of things. So that I'm excited to see a new generation come through who is going to have, maybe a little bit easier than people who've been in the industry for some years. But we're paving the way so this can happen.
Alex, do you see yourself as one of the leaders of that new generation?
I hope so. I've been writing about racism. I've been writing about people with disabilities in the travel industry, LGBT travel, um, decolonization, different aspects. And I used to get very frustrated that, I wasn't, maybe sometimes with some of my articles, I was like, why isn't this reaching people? Why don't they feel connected? Why aren't we doing anything in the tourism industry to change these things? Because it's all important things. Um, but sometimes it just takes moments in history, which we've been dealing with in the last few months, where people are kind of have the opportunity to slow down, to look around and go, oh, you know what, things aren't exactly great. So it's just, for me, it's just being there, still writing the stories over the years, still being a voice for people who need a voice in the tourism industry, and being allies to those people who have done amazing jobs in the tourism industry, but maybe haven't got the coverage that they needed. For me, I've always tried to go out and look for those people who need to have their stories told and need to be included in my articles. And that's kind of why I've continued to do it over the years, and why I will continue to do it as well.
And you've done it well enough to survive financially.
Yes, I think people were pretty surprised about me becoming a freelance writer, but when I got into travel, they were like, ooh, this is fun. You're going on trips, you're writing about stuff that I'm excited about. But the other day I shared a story about being an ethical and a responsible traveler right now during the pandemic. And people from my hometown, which is much smaller than Dallas, it is in Texas. Maybe they have some conservative views. I had somebody reach out to me and said, hey, we read your article, and it's just making me think about things I didn't necessarily think about as a traveler. I would just go and I would just travel and I would have a good time. And I wouldn't think about how my spending, my travel experiences might have negative effects on local communities, on the tourism industry, or maybe how I wasn't being aware of things in the tourism industry, but now I'm looking at those things a little bit differently. As a travel writer, that just makes my day. I want my work to help people think about things they've never thought about. Travel is fun, it is great, and it is one of those experiences that can uplift you. But if we aren't aware of how we travel and what we do when we're on our trips, we can do some harm to communities that are being kind enough to let us experience their culture and their destination.
I think it's true. Krippendorf said that we all, when we travel, we all have the opportunity to build up human values or destroy them. And we should always travel recognizing that we have that responsibility. Alex, thank you very much indeed. I think that's a very perceptive view, and I hope that you will lead other travel writers to follow in your footsteps. Thank you very much.